I'm with Eliza Orlins, who is a career public defender. We're here to talk about the TikTok ban, which looks like it might be happening. The Supreme Court just talked to both sides, the Justice Department and TikTok's lawyers. And Eliza, I'm not a lawyer, so I want to bring on the best and brightest on this channel to help me understand what's happening. And I am a little confused. What do you think is going to be the outcome? But before we get there, I want to know, why is this happening?
Hi, Keith. I'm happy to be here chatting with you as usual, but I think that, understanding the motivations behind this is far more complicated. I think, there is a lot of information that the Meta folks and Zuckerberg were behind wanting to ban a far more popular platform. Obviously, with the TikTok ban going into effect, more people will migrate over to Meta. I think, there are a lot of incentives for this to have taken shape. Especially the democratization of information. I think a lot of young people are getting their news from TikTok, and I think that felt threatening to a lot of the old guard, if you will.
Got it. So you don't think within the law there is any sort of justification for this, for the bill that was passed?
Listen, while there might be, we haven't seen any evidence as to what the national security risks actually are. And when there is an infringement upon someone's First Amendment rights, the law dictates, our Constitution dictates, that the highest level of scrutiny must be applied. So that being strict scrutiny and the least restrictive means. TikTok's lawyers, I think, argued quite compellingly, even if it doesn't fall on, the most sympathetic of ears, that this is an extremely broad thing to do. I mean, it's the most restrictive, in fact. An all-out ban is the most restrictive thing they could possibly do. And when something implicates free speech, they should be opting for less restrictive alternatives.
That makes sense to me. I guess I don't know if I'm sympathetic to the argument, but I guess what I don't understand what they're arguing, because TikTok could just sell the app, right? And then it's no longer within Chinese control, which is what the law is asking. And then it would no longer be violating anyone's free speech, right? I mean, that's what the Justice Department at least argues.
Correct. So, the way that they have kind of put this, they've said, no, this isn't a ban. This isn't a ban. Even though some of the authors of the bill, such as Josh Hawley and others, said outright, this is a ban, because they knew that the time limit for divestiture could simply not be completed, nor does this app that is a worldwide app want to divest. Why would they want to divest? They have this very successful app that's continuing to grow in popularity around the world. Why would they want to divest? That is, sort of a tangential issue that they are trying to say, well, they could have just divested. The Chinese government might influence the algorithm and manipulate us and blah, blah, blah. I mean, this is something that could be addressed with a disclosure then, and consenting adults, Americans, could say, I'm opting in. I would like to participate in this app. And furthermore, there are other Chinese apps on our phones. I have WeChat. People use Teemu and Shein and all sorts of other things that are data collection. And yet this is only being applied to the one app where people actually express their views.
Yeah, I guess Teemu, though, is fashion, right? So Teemu is not going to doesn't control what people see. So I guess that's maybe the difference there.
Right. But I think that the data that's collected, part of this argument that the government is making, that the Solicitor General made, is that the data collection is problematic. But in fact, the data collection on Teemu is actually far more intense. I mean, if you think about it, if you want to buy something, you need to put your home address in, your credit card number, your billing address, all sorts of your geolocation, it's all sorts of things that TikTok does not, in fact, have access to. So, I think TikTok's lawyer is making that comparison in a way, basically saying this is the real motive of Congress in trying to pass this law, was to regulate speech, because they are critical of the views that are being expressed on this app.
Got it. So that's like the push and the pull here. What do you personally believe? Is that your thought about this potential sale/ban?
I think it is a very dangerous precedent to be setting for suppressing speech in the future. This if the Supreme Court rules in this way to uphold this ban, this is something that could throw into chaos, all of the things that we think of as being fundamental rights in America in terms of our free speech. This throws into question whether they would overturn New York Times v. Sullivan, one of the seminal free speech cases decided before the Supreme Court.
What is that?
That was the case where a public figure sued the New York Times, saying that libelous views, that defamatory things had been said about him, and essentially on a public figure, the Supreme Court required actual malice in publishing something that is of the public interest, really setting a broad standard for what constitutes free speech. And I think that this would be a new and dangerous era of speech regulation if the Supreme Court upholds this ban.
Just in time for the Trump administration, which will, I'm sure, be great for our rights and our speech.
Exactly.
Yay.
And basically they can shut down any speech they don't like. It's a frightening power for them to shut down speech they do not like. And that is, the ACLU was on the side of TikTok saying this is an extremely imminent harm. This is very, very dangerous. And unfortunately, the questions the justices were asking, what you asked at the beginning, it really seems as though they are poised to rule in favor of upholding the ban.
Wow. And so, and I do believe Trump even was like, hey, just hold off on this. I can make this better when I get into office the next day. And you don't think they're going to go with that?
I don't think so. I think we will see a quick ruling within the next 9 days. However, TikTok's lawyer did say, by the way, this is totally up for you have the power to issue a temporary injunction to basically say, okay, we're going to stay this. We're going to contemplate this. There is a new administration taking over. This emergency power they would have to hold off on a ruling before the 19th. But it seems as though they're poised to make a decision.
Would it be unusual for them to do that? To basically hold off on a law becoming enacted because of a new administration in the executive branch? It doesn't make sense to me.
Well, in certain circumstances, it might. Unfortunately, this one was, remember, like, I'm just a bill on Capitol Hill. Like, this bill became a law in that it was passed by Congress, and then President Biden signed it into law. So because this is already a law, we would be asking them to put a pause on it before their decision is made. But everything about this has kind of been unprecedented, granting cert and then saying, oh, there are 22 days until oral arguments. You have the day after Christmas or 2 days after Christmas to file your briefs, and then reply briefs due January 3rd, oral arguments January 10th. This was a really expedited timeline, which kind of had to happen given how soon the ban was coming into effect.
Got it. And so, yeah, let's just dive into what you think is going to happen. So I did not follow the actual arguments. I read a synopsis of everything. It seemed to me that it felt a little bit more like each side seems like it had a bit of a battle with the justices, but you believe that it seems as though they're poised to. And I have seen some other responses that it looks like they're poised to uphold the ban. But why do you feel that way?
That was my interpretation just from having listened to it firsthand. I posted the video saying, I think that the justices are going to uphold the ban. And then I saw the New York Times push notification, other notifications saying the same. And so I felt validated in that was not just my interpretation, but basically a number of the justices said things that indicated that they believed this wasn't a free speech issue. Even Justice Amy Coney Barrett said the law doesn't say TikTok has to shut down. It says ByteDance has to divest, even though we know divestiture is not realistic, et cetera. But Justice Kagan said the law is targeted at this foreign corporation that doesn't have First Amendment rights. And Chief Justice John Roberts said, Congress doesn't care what's on TikTok. Congress is fine with the expression. And Ketanji Brown Jackson said, it doesn't say TikTok, you can't speak. So it really, really sounded like the justices were heavily weighing on the side of upholding this law.
And if it is upheld, what does that mean moving forward for the next 4 years in terms of our rights and the incoming administration, which I'm sure is going to be every day trying to destroy the constitutional rights we have? What does this precedent set just the day before the administration takes power?
I think that the dangerous precedent that it's going to set is that, this could really be a situation where we are seeing our free speech rights being infringed upon in a whole host of different ways. You know, we just saw the way in which they said they're no longer going to even try to combat misinformation on Meta. We saw, you know, Mark Zuckerberg's announcement after having gone down to Mar-a-Lago to have a heart-to-heart with Trump. You know, I do think that this is, you know, very, very scary in terms of what the future effects could be, but also, you know, what the practical effects will be is that the app stores, you know, Google and Apple and every web hosting, AWS, whatever hosts these, hosts TikTok, you know, or has it on the app store, must remove these services or they will receive fines that are so exorbitant you can't even imagine. I think it's, you know, a certain amount per every active user, and we know there are 170 million Americans who have this app, so it would just be absolutely massive penalties that I'm certain they won't want to face. So it looks like it could be removed as soon as 9 days from now. So post your drafts, everyone, is all I'd say.
Wow. Well, that's wild. I'm so sorry. I know that you have a huge platform there, but you are building here. I do think YouTube is going to be a beneficiary of this. I hope Mark Zuckerberg isn't as much as YouTube is, because I do think YouTube is a place not only where they still make sure that people are safe here, that you do also have freedom of expression on YouTube. And I know that you have a channel here, and I would love for you to tell people a little bit about that.
Yes. I mean, so as a public defender for 15 years in Manhattan, I talk a lot about legal issues. I break down legal cases. I help people understand their rights when it comes to interactions with the police or any type of, you know, First, Second, Fourth, Fifth, Sixth Amendment rights, you know, everything, breaking it down for people. So would love for folks to follow me, find me on YouTube. I think it's at Eliza.Orleans on YouTube.
Great. And you will be tagged in the description of this video. And I can't thank you enough for the quick, the quick interview you gave me here, because I have such a hard time following the legalese of all of this. And it's so nice that you were able to break it down for me and the rest of the community here. So thank you so much.
Of course. Happy to. Anytime. We can talk law cases whenever you want.
I need it so badly because there's so much law happening. And I'm just like, what does this mean?